Welcome to the Dallas Regional Chambers Confronting COVID-19 virtual town hall series. We're so glad that you took time to be with us this morning. Sharing and working with data with TWC has been critical because that will help us determine how to upskill and reskill people as they're moving from a prior job opportunity to a new one. We're also very focused working on with our partners on the policies that are needed to get back to work, both safely and quickly. We want to bring you the benefit of our relationships and expertise from our great professional service members, direct experts like the commissioner. This is really important so that we can all have the best information possible. So in conversation with members over the last few weeks, we continue to hear questions specifically about employment, furloughs, layoffs, and questions about going back. Commissioner Aaron Demerson and Sherry Travers, who are two experts in this area, thank you so much for being here to speak about these critical issues. Let's talk for a minute about today's format. The commissioner will begin his remarks, followed by Sherry's presentation. Sherry Travers, one of the most respected labor and employment attorneys in this region, has been with Littler for a number of years. We're so grateful to have you, Sherry, in this complex employment landscape, your experience across many industries. We'll also leave time for questions, and you can use the Q&A function to submit yours. Finally, I'll wrap up the conversation around 10:45 a.m. So with that, let me introduce the commissioner. It's my honor to have him here. He has served on the governor-appointed 3-member Texas Workforce Commission since 2019, and he is our commissioner, the one who represents employers. In this role, he provides leadership and direction to engage employers, business organizations, and the economic development community in the ongoing development of a customer-focused, market-driven workforce system. And that's a mouthful. But we've been lucky to work with Aaron for a number of years because he previously served as the director as well. And he was on Governor Perry's staff and in the governor's office. We're so grateful to have you with us today. So now I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Demerson. Thank you.
Good. Thank you guys so much for holding this call and for the invitation to participate. Also, my thanks to Dale and my good friend Mike Rosa over there. Make sure you let them know I said hello in that regard. But just appreciate all the Dallas Regional Chamber has done over the years. As you've mentioned, I've been in the trenches with you guys working on projects over the years, and I'd always enjoy the relationship that we've had with you guys. And so continue your dedication, the leadership, and the commitment to make things happen. On behalf of Governor Abbott and myself, let me just say thanks to all of those that are on this call today. Those businesses are in Texas, in your respective region, are very, very important to us. And we thank you not only for your leadership and your investment in our state, not only for what you're doing today, which is very important, but and that's simply taking care of business. As you mentioned, the governor appointed me to this position in 2019, and I'm proud to represent the employers here in the state. And so at this time, our response to our Texas employers is both critical and crucial. And we at the Workforce Commission, we're going to do our part to make sure that we're making a difference in a big, big way, especially surrounding COVID-19. On my team, we have 4 dynamic employment law attorneys, and grateful to have Sherry on this call as well. I know their plates are full with all the questions that have been asked in this particular situation. But we have 4 employment attorneys: Tommy Simmons, who's joined me, he's joining me on this call, Melissa Chapa, Elsa Ramos, and Mario Hernandez. They've been answering phone calls over the past month that folks have. We represent the employers, but we've also been taking a bunch of claimant calls and trying to help out wherever we can to jump in to make a difference. We posted over about 20 to 25 virtual town hall meetings, again, speaking directly to small businesses and employers in regards to what we have available, the resources are available, and making ourselves front and center in that regard. Also on the call today, we have Dale Robertson, who's the Office of Employer Initiatives Director there, and Mariana Vega, who's our Labor Market and Career Information Department, LMCI team for data and trends. You mentioned skilled training, and Dale's team handles the Skills Development Fund program. And so as we rebound and restructure, those are programs that are of importance. They may not be in the same format that we've always had them, but we're going to be very flexible and adjust to whatever the needs are based on what the employers are telling us. Also at the local level is the Greater Dallas Workforce Solutions Office. That's Lori LeRae. She's the CEO of that operation. Those are the boots on the ground for the local area. And I want to overemphasize the importance that chamber members should have with that local Workforce Solutions Office. Lori and her guys are there making a big deal, very important part of the team for the region. You know, it's interesting times right now. We're experiencing companies that are experiencing layoffs, furloughs, that's been mentioned, but at the same time, we have companies that are hiring out there as well. And so the governor will be making an announcement at 2 o'clock today. It's his regular press conference that he has at 2 o'clock, I believe, on COVID-19. And so stay tuned for that as well. But I want to, again, overemphasize the important role that Lori and her team plays. I want to briefly highlight some of the force to make a difference. We've had an unprecedented amount of calls coming through over the past months, and we quickly exercise and waive the workforce work search requirement. Took that off the plate where folks don't have to do those work search requirements at this particular time. We also went in there and the governor basically waived the waiting period. There was a 1-week waiting period that we have, and we were able to waive that waiting period and to allow us to move forward. The governor also asked for designation from the SBA that was received, in the EIDL, that Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and the Paycheck Protection Program loan, the PPP, were all approved. I know those funds are exhausted right now, but we received that designation and moved forward. And then quickly after that, the governor entered into a relationship with Goldman Sachs. The governor's office, Lift Fund, was another organization, but he had a press conference where there were $50 million issued out through the Goldman Sachs Small Business Program as well. Again, quickly, funds evaporated very quick, which shows the need that's out there. And as I begin to wrap up, last Friday, the governor issued 3 new executive orders to begin the process of reopening Texas for business. He established a strike force team for that. And on the economic development workforce in international side, Robert Allen, who's the president and CEO of the Texas Economic Development Corporation, Go Big, Go Texas, is on that team. They're one of the leaders there. We also have Adriana Cruz, who is a newly appointed director for the Economic Development and Tourism team in the governor's office. That's one of the leaders. And then our own Secretary of State, Ruth Hughes, is also one of the leaders in that particular area. She's a former commissioner that represented employers and now the Secretary of State. So we have some dynamic leaders in that area, and this office looks forward to collaborating with them as we go about reopening our state, with safety being the highest priority all the time in that regard. Lastly, let me just mention, since last week, we've had awarded over $579 million in benefits to about 387,000 Texans, about 400,000 Texans that have been receiving benefits. And to put it in perspective, we've taken 2 years of claims in 33 days. And that's a lot of telephone calls. I mean, it's 2 years of claims in 33 days. But a number of initiatives that we put in place to make sure that we're answering those questions, and hiring more people to fill phone calls. We've added more telecenters. We've gone from 4 to 8 in that regard. Expanded more traffic opportunities on our web. Created a chat box as well that we named Larry in honor of our former executive director, Larry Temple. And we've extended the hours as well. We're going 7 to 7. 7 days a week as well. And so we're doing our part to try to make a difference, and we're not going to stop at all in that regard. Times may be tough, but so are Texans. And so we look forward to doing what we can to make a difference as we move forward. Again, thank you, Angela, at the chamber level for what you guys are doing. Know that we have partnerships with you guys and stand ready to help any way that we can. And again, Lori LeRae at the local level, Greater Dallas Workforce Solutions Office, that office right in that building with you guys, is a wealth of experience and someone that you guys should tap into as we move forward. Thank you guys again for the opportunity, and we look forward to addressing questions after Sherry's presentation. And I appreciate Sherry being on the call. That's an employment law firm here in Texas. We appreciate what you guys are doing because it's all hands on deck as we have in front of us right now. Angela, thank you guys again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sherry, I'll turn it to you.
It's great to be here with you this morning. I'm Sherry Travers with the Littner Law Firm. We're a global employment law firm that specializes in helping employers in all aspects of the employment relationship. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about the pandemic planning from what we're doing right now, but also looking forward because there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that employers are doing right now as we prepare to reopen the workplace. So we still have a group of employers that are focused on some past and present type aspects as opposed to the future. And that's still deciding, do we need to do extended layoffs or furloughs? Do we need to add additional people to those furloughs and layoffs, and trying to make those types of decisions? There are also aspects involved in what kind of pay cuts may need to be taken. So we're seeing employers reducing pay for everyone across the board so that they can share the pain, so to speak. We're also seeing employers focus on particular groups or business units and making pay cuts within those particular units. And then even within those units, sometimes the pay cuts are happening only with regard to the management level individuals and not with the individuals that are really doing the work. So a lot of those discussions are still taking place. And an additional one I want to mention to you is we have a number of employers that are actually converting on a temporary basis their exempt employees to non-exempt status so that they can reduce their pay and reduce their hours without jeopardizing their exemption from federal wage law overtime requirements. So that's a very temporary fix. And all of those changes, of course, need to be made very carefully to make sure that they're consistent with the law and that the company isn't doing anything that could cause them problems when we all reopen and go back to normal. So that I'll put in the category of things that have been going on and continue with a different focus. But for the rest of my time, I want to focus on looking forward and what are the big things that the company needs to be thinking about as they're preparing to bring people back. And so one of the key questions that's going to have to be asked is, can you legally bring people back? And if so, what people are those, right? And so we're focusing on essential businesses, essential workers, and it's not going to, as we know from the news, it's not going to be just bringing everybody back at one time. It's going to be done in stages, but even going to have to be a determination made about which workers legally can come back, whether that's under the governor's order or under one of the many stay-home orders in Dallas County and other jurisdictions in Texas, which is really important for those of you that have individuals that are in more than one county besides Dallas County. And then also to the extent that you're multi-state, you're going to have to take into account other jurisdictions. So that's the big number one consideration is who can you legally bring back and when? Then in tandem with that, the second thing that a lot of employers are doing already right now is they're looking at their workspace configurations, because several years ago, many companies went to a more collaborative type workspace that has people grouped very closely together. And obviously, some of the issues that we're dealing with, for example, social distancing, are going to continue in some aspect when we all go back to the workplace. So there are already vendors out there in the construction business making inspections of workspaces to determine when the folks are ready to come back, what sort of changes need to be made to that workspace. So it could be the way the workspace is actually configured, where the work is performed. It could be things such as traffic flow. Maybe there was more movement throughout the floor before. They're going to be restricting or looking at ways to restrict movement around the floor and looking at closing off areas where employees would congregate. So that could be a break room. That could be some other room that's in the facility that you're dealing with. So those are all issues that are being done right now in terms of having that kind of inspection and assessment made, so that they can have those changes made before they start bringing people back and have a comfortable, well-established place for people to return to as they start to move back into the workplace. Another thing that's going to have to be done, and I would say this is category number 3, is making sure that the workplace is supplied with the necessary materials. So, for example, we're all used to the little medicine cabinets we have for workers' compensation purposes in our offices. Well, now we're going to be looking at what else do we need to have. Do we have an area similar to that that has to have wipes and has to have gloves and has to have masks? And what are companies going to have to do in that regard? So they need to perform that type of assessment in tandem with what's going on with the physical workspace inspection and determining what supplies they're going to need to have going forward, and then making sure they have the supply chain in place to provide those for the employees when they return. So there's a lot of activity in that space as well right now. And then the fourth thing tied into that is actually dealing with notices. So when the pandemic started, obviously we had special federal leave laws went into place, which required employers to update their posters and put up new notices. We should expect that to continue as we go back into the workplace. And so process, employers are going to need to look at what notices are legally required and making sure that before they bring folks back that they have those notices posted. Now, we're expecting that the agencies are going to allow a little latitude, just like they did under the federal paid leave law. And by that, I mean, they're not going to come in and start enforcing it from day one when people go back. So there'll probably be about a 30-day grace period to get some of these things in place. But right now you can't count on that, but you can build that into your plan, realizing that everybody's going to be trying to go back. Everybody's going to be trying to get a hold of contractors to perform these assessments, and not everybody can have that done at once. So there is going to be a bit of a backlog on that. The fifth item, one of the most challenging areas we're seeing now and will be even more of a challenge going forward, has to do with the workplace safety issues for medical checks. So right now, what do people do? We have people coming into work as essential workers, and there's a concern that they may bring COVID into the workplace, and how do we prevent that from happening? So you've seen on the news that there have been temperature checks being done. There's a question about where are those done? Do employees do them at their home before they report to work, or are they going to do those when they get to the office? And companies are doing it different ways. We actually have some companies that have provided masks and or some type of face covering to their employees for them to bring to the workplace. And then also they provided thermometers for the employee to take their temperature before they come to the workplace. On the other hand, there are other companies that perform that when the employee actually reports to work. They're taking the temperature at that point because they feel that's more accurate, and you're not allowing them for the commute time and what may have happened during the commute time, and then providing the mask or face covering when the person reports to work. So we're going to have a lot of issues in that regard about how do we work that, and do we do testing during the day? Do we do it every day? Do we do it when they report to work? Do we do it when they leave? What are the mechanics of that? What's that look like? And then other testing you're hearing about on the news, that is they're going to be testing for antibodies. And this brings into a whole range of issues because a little over a month ago, if we'd had this presentation and you had asked me if an employer can take an employee's temperature, I would have said a resounding no, that that's prohibited under discrimination laws, both state and federal. But there is a special exception now because of the pandemic with which we're dealing. And so employers have a temporary pass, if you will, to be able to do that so long as the pandemic remains in place or some aspects of it continue on. So there's going to be new guidance coming out. There's new guidance issued almost on a daily basis in this area. And in fact, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is the federal agency overseeing employment discrimination laws at the federal level, they've issued several updates now, including one a few days ago, where they're relaxing the requirements or the restrictions on employers about what kind of health or medical related questions can be asked. But the one thing that they're consistent with, and this will be very important going forward, is one, who has access to that data, and two, how is it stored? And so this type of information about temperatures, about testing, is just like any other medical information you would have for an employee, that it must be restricted to people with a need-to-know basis only, and it needs to be locked down separate and apart from other aspects of the employee's records, including the personnel file. So you're going to see policies and procedures being rolled out about these various items with regard to medical testing, health-related questions, and requirements employers will have to protect privacy of those individuals as much as possible. And then the last piece I wanted to add on that has to do with the compliance, and sort of ties in with the medical testing. And that is, employers have been able to, over the last month, and will continue to be able to ask employees questions that a month or two they couldn't have asked. And that could include, are you running a temperature? Have you had a temperature? Have you been coughing? Have you been sneezing? Are you feeling aches and pains? Have you been around someone that's been exposed to COVID, or someone you think might be exposed to COVID? Have you had COVID, or someone in your family? Are they currently subjected to COVID? So a lot of those kind of questions are going to be asked. And so employers are looking at, in addition to just testing they may do, for example, taking the temperature, about kind of certification or compliance document an employee would complete on a daily basis answering these and maybe other questions so that they can contain the workplace safety aspects as much as possible and make sure everybody is in a safe work environment. So those are the really big pieces that employers are dealing with right now in terms of how do we bring back people, how do we get them back in the office and do that safely at the outset, but maintain that safety, especially when we keep hearing in the news that we're expecting a recurrence of this in the fall. So we want to be best prepared to protect people now, but also lay the groundwork in the workplace that if and when this virus resurfaces, that we're not going to have the situation we had this time and people would be better protected. So Commissioner Angela, those are the key points I wanted to share from the employer perspective. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions we may have.
Great, thank you, Sherry. So your first comes in from Andrew Fortin, Associate Senior Vice President of External Affairs. You touched on this a little bit. He asked, what are the steps an organization should take with employees when beginning to transition back to working in an office with the threat still present? And you talked about some of those, but Sherry, how would you distinguish kind of what the employer might need to do before they let anybody on the floor versus things they could do once people are there?
So, for example, in that question, the things to me that have to be done before the employee comes back are the inspection I talked about. And that would be probably also having an industrial hygienist come in and test the air, make sure that the air is okay. And looking at that, you're going to be looking at what about the airflow? So you need to make an adjustment to the HVAC system, but an industrial hygienist is going to be very important to that. And that physical inspection part needs to happen before anybody comes, because you're probably going to have employees, we're seeing this already, by the way, that don't want to come back, that even though they've been provided representations by their employer that we've had the place inspected, we've had it sanitized, we're doing it every day with enhanced cleaning, they don't want to come back. So you absolutely have to, for those individuals, be able to do those physical items we talked about first and be able to provide proof, if you will, to the employees that has been done. So a communication plan is going to be a key part of that, Angela.
Thank you. Commissioner, the next one is for your team. This is from Michael Gallups. He says, how does a sole proprietor apply for unemployment? They only have their owner's draw, which shows his income, and they have been turned down when they've applied in the past. They're having trouble reaching someone with their questions. Do sole proprietors also qualify for DUA/PUA?
All right, I'm going to let Tom Simmons, he's a senior legal counsel here, answer that. And so we're practicing safe distances, and so you'll see Tommy coming into the picture there. All right.
Hello, hi, Tommy Simmons, and thanks for that question. That person should attempt to file again because the latest we have from our unemployment insurance division is that sole proprietors and independent contractors and other people who are not traditionally qualified for unemployment benefits are starting to file claims and are starting to be paid benefits under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, the PUA. And if they qualify for that, they can also qualify for the $600 extra payment under the FPUC program, the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, under Section 2104 of the CARES Act. So they should give it another try. And as far as establishing a weekly benefit amount is concerned, that's done under the same rule that applies to disaster unemployment assistance. And that's basically found in Title 20 of the Code of Federal Regulation, Section 625.6. And what that amounts to, long and short of it, is establishing an earnings history based on IRS income tax documentation for the year 2019. And instructions should appear as soon as somebody successfully files a claim. So give it another try.
Thank you so much, Tommy. So the next question we have is, what sources of news would you direct employers to consult for reliable information? Certainly, I would direct you to the Dallas Regional Chamber website. We are consolidating a lot of things. I know Littler is putting out a lot of COVID-19 information for employers around employment law. And then specific resources that you guys are using or what you would direct employers to as they're navigating these waters?
Yeah, our Texas Workforce Commission website, we have a red bar across that, and that's twc.state.tx.us. But if you hit Texas Workforce Commission, you'll pull that up, and we have a red bar for job seekers, for employers, and it's the latest relevant information that we have available. And also on our website from the employer side, we have a frequently asked question document that's out there for employers as well.
Commissioner?
Go ahead, Dale.
Angela, I'd like to add that we also just launched a specific resource page for small businesses. So the same information that site that the commissioner mentioned, you will find specific resources for small businesses on the TWC site. And so we're assisting in that manner as well.
Commissioner, you mentioned that you guys had handled 2 years worth of claims in 33 days, which is amazing. And thank you so much to your team for working through all of that. But there have been some questions and concerns in the media about the solvency of unemployment insurance and kind of how that works in Texas. Could you speak to that piece a little bit to help folks understand that better?
Yeah, we're basically moving forward. Our UI Compensation Trust Fund is at a certain dollar amount, and we're paying out in record amounts right now. If those amounts are going below a certain level, we'll look to borrow. I think using Title 12, if I'm not mistaken, we'll look to borrow funds in that regard. And if everything goes okay, we'll be in a position to pay that back. If we're not in a position to pay that back, then we'll have interest that may be added at some particular point. But that's the unknown. I know what we know right now is that we are in a position to pay out. Everyone in Texas that's entitled to benefits will receive benefits, and we're going to make that happen. So we have a team that's addressing those situations, that's been ahead of it in front in big ways. So we don't see a point where Texas will not be in a position to pay those that are entitled to benefits.
This is one for you from Scott. He says, following up on the issue of employees declining to show up for work, what are the legal implications if employees refuse to return because they do not believe they are safe?
Thank you. So this is one of the questions we receive, it seems as if almost on a daily basis. And so first of all, if someone's on unemployment and you've offered them the opportunity to come back and they're not coming back, you have the right to notify the TWC, and I'll let the commissioner follow up on this, of course, but you have the right to notify the TWC that you've offered that individual work, and you would provide specifics about what work you've offered, for example, what duration, the volume of work, and you'd want to be candid about what's the reason for them not coming back. So let's talk for a brief moment about what is the reason. So until the Dallas paid sick leave law was enjoined very recently, there was a position that if someone, because of COVID, did not want to come to work because of preventative reasons, they were afraid of contracting the disease, that they might have been able to take leave under that ordinance and be protected for doing so. There's still some argument out there that that would be the same situation under the federal paid leave law. And obviously that law is so new and it's not tested yet, so we'll sort of have to see with that. But I would leave you with this on that question. Those of you that saw the governor speak the other day, somebody in the audience point blank asked the governor about what if people don't want to come back to work. And he was very candid about his position on that is, if you have someone who genuinely does not want to return to the workplace out of fear of contracting COVID, you should not force them to physically come back to work. And I think that's the right approach to take with this. I think it needs to be a soft hand and try to find some way for them to work remotely. And granted, there are certain positions people can't work remote, but it has been amazing through this pandemic of positions we've seen for companies that a month or two ago, we were told, oh, there's no way this job can be done remotely, and now it can be. So certainly some aspects of those jobs can be done remotely, and that should be the focus on it. But if you're in a position where you really want to terminate somebody because you've ordered them to come back to work and they're not, I would implore you to talk to your employment lawyers before you do that so you can make sure you evaluate the factors I just mentioned, and then there's some additional ones as you drill down on that inquiry that you'd want to take care of.
Thank you. This is a question from Drexel. Dale, you mentioned the Skills Development Fund, and the question is, what other resources for getting workers trained with new skills would you recommend to support employers?
Well, I do recommend the Skills Development Fund, and what we've got approved a week or so ago from the commissioners to use an amount up to $10 million to provide to our local community colleges as well as our local workforce development boards, in addition to some other dollars that we've received from the federal government to provide training specific to companies and their workers who are either on reduced hours or furloughed, and the training that the business needs them to have. So our focus would be on those essential workers and those essential industries. But in addition, we're looking at training individuals who, like I said, were furloughed, laid off. And so that's a skills development fund as the primary source for that. We'll make those dollars available to the local community and technical colleges in the state. And in addition, we'll be making some funds available to our workforce boards. And as Commissioner mentioned, you have the Workforce Solutions in Dallas there, and the Dallas Community College District, and the surrounding colleges in the area will all be eligible to apply for those funding. And the training will be driven by what they know is needed locally in their communication with businesses.
So, Commissioner, that raises a question. You know, here in the local region, we work very closely and really appreciate Lori and her team at Workforce Solutions and work closely with the community colleges as well. But a lot of the training dollars were driven by what were considered the hot jobs or the high need jobs. A lot of that's kind of gone up in smoke now because it's a different combination of hot jobs or in need jobs than it was 4 weeks ago. Could you talk a little bit about how your team is gathering all of that information and then helping to drive the new need post-COVID?
Yeah, and I had Mariana Vega on the line as well. She's our labor market director. And so a lot of the information that's coming in, things are different right now. And so the governor from his leadership said, we're going to be very flexible in our approach. We're going to listen to the needs of employers. And that's where the Dallas Regional Chamber, our local workforce boards have a big role to play, because what we hear that's coming from the local level, that allows Dale and his team to be flexible to meet the needs of that local community. And so you won't find us here in Texas drawing a stick in the sand, a line in the sand, or just putting our head down. We're going to be flexible, we're going to listen, and we're going to be proactive in regards to what the jobs are until we position to whatever this new normal is from that standpoint. But we're going to deal directly with what's in front of us to make a difference. And that's a lot of listening and then putting action behind that listening.
Right. We've talked a little bit about litigation, and I know some employers are concerned about potentially being sued by a customer. Are we going to need to have customers? One of the questions from Dwayne was, are customers going to have to sign waivers, or how do you envision that working for employers?
Okay, well, that's definitely more of an area of personal injury law that I would not want to get into as a TWC employment lawyer, but it would be a good idea, of course, to speak with an experienced, competent personal injury law attorney regarding any waiver on that. And I'd be curious to see what Sherry has to say.
First, on that question about the third parties that you're talking about, ideally, if you're doing everything right for your employees and taking care of them, that should naturally flow out and take care of the third parties that are coming into your workspace, whether those are contractors, couriers that come in, whether they're restaurants, whatever it might be. So for the largest part, that should contain the potential risk. As my colleague at the TWC mentioned, I'm an employment lawyer. I'm not a personal injury lawyer, but if they want to, you certainly can get documents signed by employees, so there wouldn't be any reason you can't get it from the customer. And then you would certainly have the option that some of the stores are doing right now. If someone, for example, comes in and they want to be there and they don't have PPE, facial covering, you may want to turn them away. But even the reality for me is on waivers, and we see waivers in all kind of aspects. And even when somebody signs a waiver, that really never stops them. If something bad really happens, you're still going to see a suit result from that. And the questions are going to be whether the waiver stands up the test of time in the litigation. But I just don't want people to have a false sense of security if they have some kind of waiver that they think that really somehow immunizes them against somebody coming back against them, whoever that person might be.
Great. We're about to run out of time. We had one last question, which was if you wanted to have an inspection vendor come to your office to sort of check out that you had done, what you needed to do, is that such a business, and who might be doing that kind of work?
So I would start out with an industrial hygienist, and there are a lot of those in the Dallas area, and we can help provide resources for those. And I recommend them first because this is a big airflow issue, right? And we know it's an airborne type situation. So you want to make sure that you take care of that first, even before you have to maybe reconfigure the workspace, and make sure that the airflow is proper. So some companies are having increased airflow, or they're altering the HVAC system to run differently than it did before. So that's where I would start, is with an industrial hygienist, and then work out from there about what you may need to do in terms of actually reconfiguring, if you need to reconfigure physical space, whether that's walls, doors, whatever it may be. But that would be my first stop.
Thank you. So we'll finish, we'll highlight this as our last question. A question from Sarah. Schools and childcare are a key issue in getting back to work. How is the TWC looking at childcare issues? What are employers doing?
So on the child care front, we've taken some bold initiatives there, put together a strike force team for child care. Even at this particular point where you have essential workers and folks needing access to child care, we've made that available, and we've redirected a large amount of money towards the local workforce board to make sure that child care is available for those that might need it. And so very innovative approaches to child care at this particular point to make sure that we're addressing the needs that are in front of us.
Well, what a terrific conversation. There's lots of other questions. On behalf of the Dallas Regional Chamber, thank you, Commissioner Demerson and your team. Thank you, Sherry Travers, for being part of this. And for all of you who joined us online. The Chamber is updating our COVID resources at dallaschamber.org every day. We also have our Displaced Job Board, which is matching displaced workers to jobs, and that's at sayyesToDallas.com. We'll send a recap to you tomorrow. So someone was asking about a summary of what Sherry said. That'll absolutely be a part of what will be available tomorrow, with helpful links that were mentioned by the Commissioner's Office, by Littler and the DRC. We're so thankful for each of you. We hope you stay safe and well, and we hope to see you very soon in person. Thank you so much for joining us today.